Hi guys, I thought I'd post another video to help you up to speed with the group investigation on conformity. A number of you have missed the introduction of this, so I want to go through the whole assignment and then I'll focus on some of the paragraphs later on. Okay, so here's the assignment on screen, group investigation on conformity. Now here, part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1, a number of you have already written your proposal and are working on the data analysis, graphing, and I've talked about that and posted that video onto DayMap. I'm going to focus on the group investigation report. So if we scroll down, part 1 is the proposal, part 2 is actually just the process of graphing, so having a look at your results and seeing what they mean. Part 3 is the actual group investigation report. Now there's another video that talks about the introduction, so have a look at that. There's a video that talks about the graphs. Now let's have a look at the discussion. So the discussion is an evaluation of the information that you've gathered. You need to be considering what it means and then maybe just hint on some explanations for why there's some variations in the data. So it's a paragraph. Let's have a look at some data. Now this is data that I made up that might or may not be similar to the data that you've collected. It's a comparison of Group A and Group B. Group A were the group that looked at photos with previous student scores on it that may have influenced them. Group B did not see the previous student scores. As you can see, I'm analysing my data now, so there is a difference between Group A and Group B here. There's a whole lot more agreeance in Group A than there is in Group B. And same for the median as well. So the fact that we see it in both the mean and median gives us a fair bit of confidence in our results. But I would say that high level of agreeance would be if we saw it all the way up to here at 100%. But we're seeing 30% agreeance. Now, there might be a number of reasons for that. Did the students actually look at the previous student scores? Maybe it's a coincidence. That's the sort of thing that you might propose. But your results do show a level of conformity to the previous student scores. The paragraph will be about the sample. You're going to talk about the participants, which means they're only a representative, they are the sample of whatever population you're suggesting. So here the point is made, what was the sample representative of the wider population? Was it too small or biased to draw accurate conclusions? So let's have a look at sample and population. Remember, a sample group is a representative group from a particular population. Now, if your population was all of Australia, does a group of 15 Year 11s represent, is it a representative sample? I'd say probably not. So that's some of the language there. Now if we go over to here, here's some language. These are in the PowerPoints, in the slides, so you can have a look at them at any time. Unrepresentative samples, they don't represent the target population. Small samples can't represent the wider population and may distort the results. Now bias is when you might have a particular leaning towards that's going to skew your results away from actually giving you a clear answer. For example, if everybody here, if there was a high level of one particular gender, males or females, that might mean that they respond in slightly different ways. And we know that females, according to some studies, have shown that they are more likely to conform. Maybe that's something that you might mention, but it does render our sample somewhat unrepresentative. Is about the investigation design. You must include the strengths and weaknesses or advantages and disadvantages. Limitations can be another word that you put in for weaknesses. So consider the design's general strengths and weaknesses and then relate this to the specific investigation. Let's have a look at experimental advantages. So the advantages of an experiment are that they're very good at eliminating extraneous variables because you're manipulating one variable and you practice random assignment that reduces personal bias, participant bias. You can also infer a strong cause and effect relationship, so the independent variable does affect the dependent variable. You can repeat it to be, have more confidence in those results. Disadvantages, sometimes it might be unethical. I don't know that it would be highly unethical to randomly assign in this case, so I don't think that that is a point that you can make. There was no reason why it would be unethical to randomly assign. Another disadvantage that you could use is it lacks external validity. External validity is, do those results apply outside of that computer room and in the real world? I guess it begs the question, looking at those pictures, would you choose differently? Would you be distracted by other things if you were having a look at those pictures online? Maybe, maybe not. That is your choice to decide on what the disadvantages are there. Other things that you might mention in the investigation design strengths and weaknesses might be that it was very simple to set up, so just randomly assigning some groups to some students to those particular PowerPoints, and then they go on the PowerPoints. I don't think there was anything that was confusing. I think it was quite straightforward for the students to understand. There was a really simple place to record your results. Most students, if I look at the actual program, most students would have understood that they just put their vote in there, and then later they will actually compare and work out their results. I think most of that would have been quite straightforward. Some might have found this part confusing, so that could be a disadvantage of the design. That might be a couple of other things that you said, but that you say about it. If on the other hand you are talking about the difference between the family, you're comparing family size to the Common Sense Sayings questionnaire, I would say one of the difficulties with this particular design itself would be that these Common Sense Saying scores were somewhat strange. And perhaps that's part of the design, but it did create some confusion in the students. Also, if you are talking about the advantages and disadvantages of this second part of the investigation, the quantitative observational design, the advantages are up online as well on the Google Docs. The advantages are that you can perform an investigation that would otherwise be impossible. Now, this one in particular would be impossible. There's no way that you can force a person's family size. That's something that is already pre-existing. Therefore, you're seeing some sort of already natural observation. The natural condition in life is the pre-existing variable, not exercise versus no exercise. No, in this case, it's family size. It's 2 paragraphs, validity and reliability. All I'm asking you to do here is to define what these terms mean. So unless you want to go further for an A+ and link it to the actual investigation, but at this stage, in stage 1, defining those 2 terms is the most important. Now, go back to the PowerPoints. Reliability is consistency, and here's some of the language that you can use. It means it's able to be repeated, that the conditions would be the same. If it's unreliable, and I would suggest this might be an unreliable investigation, might not be reliable if it was done in the same way. We haven't kept the important participant characteristics the same. We haven't accounted for a range of participant characteristics. The conditions might have been different. They might not be conducted in a classroom, for example. Validity, are we measuring what we claimed, what we set out to measure? First of all, there's some parts about measuring, just adding up those results is going to be an important thing. There could be some inaccuracies in the adding up, and then can we draw accurate conclusions from this data? So like I said, the main thing is about the research ethics. It's a discussion, of course. All of these can be one paragraph each. Research ethics is your last paragraph before the conclusion. What you have to do is refer to most of the research ethics and discuss whether you think we've achieved them or they were breached. Now, you've got this one already, so the responsibilities of the researcher, that refers to the ethics, and I made up a silly acronym for it, CRIV-PPAD, and it was confidentiality maintained. Maybe other students saw other people's results. That would have had an impact on it. Was it voluntary participation? I did go out and ask some people, and the class themselves were asked to join in, but maybe they felt pressure if they didn't want to join in. They certainly might have. Right to withdraw, maybe if you were feeling uncomfortable, you might not have felt that you really could withdraw. You didn't want to put your hand up. Informed consent, well, I would say that was done fairly well. You were given a sheet of information explaining the investigation. Accurate reporting, don't know. Can you be sure that all the data has been accurately reported? There was a little bit of deception in that you weren't really told that Group A and Group B had slightly different PowerPoints, one with the previous student's report or choice and the other one without. But none of that is actually going to cause any psychological harm. But I did debrief and we talked about it afterwards. Did the researcher, which was me, did they conduct themselves professionally? So some of them, I would say there was a yes, and some of them a no. Last one, does the data, this is the conclusion, you're just saying, does it support, that's the language you use, support or reject the hypothesis? Is there some usefulness in this about family size and conformity, or about whether people conform to the previous student scores? And you must mention some future improvements. So a couple of improvements would be definitely one, to have more participants involved, increase the reliability by having more participants, having a wider range of participants, not just from one year level, not just having them from one particular background, having people from a range of backgrounds, a range of ages. All of those things would be future improvements that you should mention in your conclusion. Okay, good luck.